Welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. This podcast is a production of Elevate, an online learning platform for fundraising event professionals. We're coming to you today from the studios of the AV department. Please welcome our hosts, Kristen Steele and Samantha Swaim.
Welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. Well, we felt like it was really important that we start to take a look at both a little bit of inspiration and a discussion about inclusion. In our work, Kristen and I have spent a lot of time looking at the event landscape and how to address inclusive fundraising practices in that space. So today we have dedicated our next two episodes to a longer conversation with Rachel D'Souza of Gladiator Consulting about community-centric fundraising. Today's episode is going to dive into community-centric fundraising, what it is, and next week we're going to take a look at how to apply it to our events. So Rachel, we're so happy to have you here on the Fundraising Elevator. Welcome.
I'm happy to be here with y'all. I feel like this has been a long time in the making, so I'm glad we finally get to have some time together.
It has. Well, Kristen, why don't we officially introduce everyone to Rachel?
Great. Rachel D'Souza is the founder of Gladiator Consulting, a boutique firm serving nonprofits across the country. Through Gladiator, Rachel has served as an innovator and pioneer in the community-centric fundraising movement, a global initiative to reimagine the nonprofit sector through a lens of radical collaboration, racial equity, social justice, and decolonization. Rachel is a proud member of the Community-Centric Fundraising Global Council. Rachel just completed her master's degree at the Washington University School of Law. Yes! Focusing on building a more transformative connection between the nonprofit and public sectors. And I can't think of anyone better to lead us in this conversation. So let's start with the big question today. For all of the folks out there that are on a whole continuum of learning about this as a topic, which gratefully is becoming more central to many conversations, what is community-centric fundraising?
Sure. Yeah. Big questions first.
Sure.
So first of all, I think one thing about community-centric fundraising is that people think that it's new. And what I would first offer is that community-centric fundraising is actually the practices and realities that existed before, capitalism and whiteness sort of co-opted philanthropy. Like philanthropy used to mean the love of humankind. We used to have indigenous and community traditions where we made sure that people in our community had what they needed, right? That we treated the environment and animals with respect, that if someone needed help or food or something, right, that we shared what we had because we put the needs and the health of our community before sort of our own individual needs. And community-centric fundraising, as sort of we know it now, is a movement that was started by a group of fundraisers of color based in Seattle, Washington, who were fed up and burnt out with what had been happening in the sector, both just sort of the harms of the way that philanthropy has shown up, scarcity in the sector, and that ultimately the way that sort of race and identity have played a part in the power dynamics. So I use the word movement, and I'll say this, right, because I think oftentimes out here on these internets, people often sort of put donor-centric fundraising and community-centric fundraising in sort of this opposition, like. You can't do one if you're doing the other. And what I would, sort of also offer to listeners is that, donor-centric fundraising is a practice. It helps us sort of figure out relationships between our donors and funders. Yeah. And parts of that, right? Parts of our relationship building and our relationship maintenance can show up in community-centric fundraising. But what community-centric fundraising is really asking us to do is, as individuals and institutions that are part of a system, sort of look at the ways in which the things we do haven't really allowed for mission-driven work, haven't allowed for, healthy and long-term employment within organizations. And we actually also have continued to exist in a space of harm reduction, but we haven't actually been able to do our missions well enough to achieve a vision, right? We're not out here closing nonprofits because we solved the problem. So it really is a movement that asks us to examine, like, how can we move resources better? How can we bring our donors along with us? But also, how can we put that impacted community at the center, right, of our work and what we're doing to give back and to be a part of communities?
What I love about the concept of this being a movement is it empowers individuals within organizations to see the dysfunctions in the systems that don't work for them within their organizations as not just being their experience in that moment in that organization, right? It allows them to realize, oh, this is how it was built in so many ways, and this is how it's been being used, and provides community in deciding, hey, yeah, this needs to be different.
Right.
I also appreciate the frame of going back to rooted practices.
Yeah.
And understanding that we're walking in an environment now where we're looking almost for like the yes and of how do we center relationship to our donor, but also center the communities we're serving and the communities doing the work. I feel like we are living in this odd time where there's sort of a push back on initiatives that are intended to kind of build up and hold around systems, hold systems accountable.
Yeah.
But I think there's still a lot of progress happening. So kind of despite pushback, Rachel, where do you see progress happening toward more community-centric practices?
Yeah. Gosh, polarizing times. I think whatever your political leanings are, none of us just fell out of the coconut tree, right? Like we exist in that context that came before us and what sort of what we're in now.
Yeah.
And I think oftentimes we want to look forward. We want to not really talk about mistakes. We don't want to make mistakes in this sector, right? Because we're scared. And if we make a mistake, we might lose our funding or we might lose our support or we might not get what we need, right, to do the work. And so we tend to sort of play it a little safe. And I don't know that has helped us. And so I think, on both sides, sort of the nonprofits and also our funders, we're starting to see people really say, okay, we've been doing things the same way for maybe a couple of decades, and we're not seeing the progress that we thought we were going to.
Yeah.
And so what does that mean? If we've been doing our work the same way over and over again and expecting different results, right? That's the definition of insanity. And so for me, I think the progress is the willingness of individuals, of fundraisers, of EDs, of board members, and of funders to be able to say, we haven't gotten this right, and we need to ask some questions, and we need to start trying different ways of doing things and see what that yields. There are, I know we're going to be talking about events, but there are organizations who have decided, what if I listen to sort of my full community instead of just my major donors? And I built an event that made everybody feel a sense of belonging, right? When we've seen organizations do that, they're not just getting event donors, they're getting annual donors and they're getting volunteers, and they're creating spaces where aunts and uncles and kids and other folks get to be sort of a part of the community that's driving this organization forward. It stops being about sort of hitting our goals, staying in the black until we start that, fiscal year over again, and then we're at the starting line. It is transformational in a longer term way, sort of in a bigger container than how we sort of confine, ourselves. And then on the same page, I've seen funders who have started to fund differently. What business can fund only knowing what 1 year of their revenue is going to look like?
Right.
You can't do that, right? And so we've seen philanthropy start to make their grant processes a little bit easier, less cumbersome.
Oh, thank
We've
goodness.
seen them offering multi-year funding, right? Because it's what an organization needs. We've seen them start to show up in ways where they're not dictating, right? You don't have to fit into the criteria that our trustees wanted. Like, we want you to tell us what you need, and let's figure out how to get you there. And so I think, the progress I've seen is pretty qualitative, right, and anecdotal at this moment. But I will share that there's a group of researchers in Seattle who's actually studying the early learnings in this community-centric fundraising movement. So we will have data soon on what it has meant for fundraisers to sort of begin to adopt this different mindset and these different practices.
That's incredible.
I love that. I'm wondering, I know that, a great majority of our audience are the frontline fundraisers we're talking about, who are within these systems, sometimes of governance, and sort of turning big big ships around in terms of
making big
momentum
change.
and making big change. And I'm wondering, in speaking to them, in these ways, with these ideas, with rethinking and reframing, how can that impact how they're doing their work? I'm thinking specifically of that kind of what's in it for me. Like, okay, this is a lot, right? I can commit to this. I want to do this. I want to agitate for this. In my moment, like, what's my impact in that? And what can that do for how I'm fundraising and what that can do?
Yeah. For me, I think it comes down to sustainability. I
Yeah.
think that a lot of organizations, no matter your size or longevity, are really struggling in this moment. And really, truly, I would say since sort of the recession, right, in 2008, we've seen such monumental shifts and changes in where money is, who has money, where wealth is, what nonprofits are doing, what they need to be doing more of, right? And we haven't quite figured out even what to do after, the Tax Cuts and Job Act passed in
Right.
2016. And now we have all this money that's in DAFs, and we don't really know how to connect with those DAF donors or how to get through the walls of the community foundation, right? And so when I think about, trying different things, yes, do I want inclusion? Of course. Yes, do I want people to feel a sense of belonging in this sector? Do I want us to examine power? Absolutely. And I think that we are at a pretty critical crossroads in this sector. And the data, y'all, every time a report comes out, I'm like, ooh, what's it going to tell us now, right? We're hearing that trust is low. We're hearing that the number of volunteers are dropping. We're hearing these things. And for me, it means that if we're going to continue to be able to do our good work, because the sector does incredible work, we are going to have to change the way that we do business. So for me, that the impact is that we're around in 5 years or we're around in 10 years.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. We had an episode with Nathan Chappell, who wrote The Generosity Crisis, and that's all of his research and, sort of understanding of trends and shifts and what we're seeing in the sector as a whole is that it is time for us to be thinking outside of the constraints and that scarcity mindset and to be looking toward how to bring more people in, how to be more thoughtful and inclusive, how to retain people, both staff and donors. Like, how do we continue to invest people in the work and the mission to create that impact?
Well, because all you have to do is walk outside your door to know that the work of the sector is not done.
Right.
It's not like all of the systems
Are
that are
suddenly-
barriers
right.
all of a sudden have fixed the problems that all of our nonprofit friends are out there addressing on the front lines day in, day out. It's not like, oh, well, sure, let's just let it all go because it's done. So I think, Rachel, exactly to your point, something's got to shift.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know if y'all are familiar with Adrienne Maree Brown. I
Yes.
adore her writings. And one of the things that she talks about is sort of these apocalypse moments, right? An apocalypse isn't the end. It is just a very clear understanding that what is not working. And now we have the opportunity to create something new. And so, like, I say this often too, like, I want to be a good ancestor, right? Like, I came into this field thinking, what have y'all been doing for the last 20 or 30 years? I don't want my kids' generation or my grandkids' generation to be like, y'all, what were you doing back then that we're still grappling with the same things, right? And so I think we really have an opportunity in this moment to allow ourselves to be uncomfortable, because in that discomfort, we will create something that will take the sector into sort of the next chapter of our story.
I know, beautifully said.
We're going to take a quick break and thank some of our friends out there, and we'll be right back.
Unleash the power of events to energize your donors and amplify your mission. Join us at the Elevate Conference in 2025, where you'll learn the essential tools for planning a successful fundraising event. Book your tickets now for March 12th and 13th. This dynamic hybrid conference, hosted at Avenue in Portland, Oregon, and streamed live for our virtual audience, will equip you with practical tools, demos, and templates that you can put to work immediately. Don't miss out. Secure your spot today at Elevate 2025. Visit elevatenonprofit.com to register now. Elevate Conference 2025 is brought to you by Swaim Strategies and the AV Department, powered by elevatenonprofit.com.
All right, before the break, we were talking a little bit about shifts and moving into a space of understanding that what was cannot always be, that we need to really start to understand that we need to rethink how things are moving. And one of the things that I think is really interesting right now that we can really learn from is the technology sector. We're seeing innovation happening at such breakneck speeds. And I think that that innovation comes because there is a willingness to say, that didn't work, let's try something different. That's not working, let's try something different. And to keep iterating toward a better result. And so I see that that need in the nonprofit sector, and some people are moving forward with change, and some people I think are cautious, and our sector moves a little slower than technology. So I'm curious about, a little bit slower, I'm curious about your thoughts, Rachel, about individual giving and where you see shifts or the future of individual giving as we continue to build a movement toward more inclusive and community-centric fundraising practices.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts on this. So, the Generosity Commission, they released their report at the end of September. And, one of the things that I can't stop thinking about in that report is their call out of how the social isolation of the pandemic
Yeah.
has really shifted people's relationships with nonprofits. Another data point that comes out of that report says, while on paper we have more dollars, right, coming in, not when you adjust for inflation, but we have more dollars and we have more volunteer hours. We actually have less people involved. So we are relying increasingly on a smaller and smaller group of individuals to meet our organization's, fundraising goals and volunteer goals. And the report sort of partially attributes that to sort of one, this declining trust. Nonprofits, you've been telling us that you're going to be doing this thing and fixing this problem and solving this issue for 10 years now, and I keep giving you my money, and you come back year after year with the same request. So is this really a good place for me to put my resources, right? Then we sort of have this piece of what our donors with assets who may be generationally older, what they wanted and needed. We know how to provide that. We've been doing it for a long time. But y'all, our sector, I'm gonna just say it, we suck when it comes to engaging millennial donors, or even putting chairs at the table for Gen Z and, quite frankly, Gen Alpha. I have a Gen Alpha daughter. She is 9 years old, and she is the number one fundraiser every year when her school does Jump Rope for Heart. She has grown up understanding what philanthropy is and is excited to be involved in it. If we cannot figure out how to cultivate a lifelong relationship with Gen Z and Gen Alpha, y'all, that's not sustainable, because our donors, right, those donors with assets, they're going to retire, they are going to move their wealth to their children or grandchildren, or they're going to pass on. And these younger generations don't share those same priorities, right? And so I'm nervous. The other thing, that comes out of this report is the sort of consistently shrinking middle class. And so you did have this broad base of folks who are both, giving 2%, I think is the number, right, of their wealthy community, who were doing those volunteers. And now they're shrinking, and they're also finding themselves in this sort of sandwich generation where they now have resources caring for parents, and they have resources that are getting their kids through school. And so I think that we have to be able to zoom out of our organizational needs and look at what has shifted over the last decade, and realize that if we want to continue to be in relationship with both our core individual donors and to attract future donors, we're going to have to listen to what they need, and then we're going to have to adapt how our organization raises money to ensure that we're able to keep them.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I want to pull through the thread, and what I hear you saying is that it's not because they don't want to. It's not
Right.
because they don't believe in philanthropy. It's not because they don't believe in volunteerism. All of those things are set, right?
Yeah.
We're tapping into motivations, but what we're not doing is we're not making space for who they are, how they are, and what they
And
want, and
y'all, that
what they want to
technology,
do.
right? As long as our nonprofit finance people are scared of Venmo and scared of Cash App, I'm telling you, the clients that we work with, there is pearl clutching when we
Yes.
talk about giving on apps. It's not, people talk about cashless. That doesn't mean that we're looking to swipe cards. It means that we're not carrying them.
Right.
Yeah.
And if people can't give
Yeah.
on their device in an easy way, whether it's Apple Pay or any,
Yeah.
you're cutting a whole group of resources out before you even get started.
In the past 3 months, technology has rapidly been rolling out CRM tools, event tools,
Yep.
platforms for giving that are exactly that. They're all like quick tap apps because that's how people are giving now. And I mean, yes, that's a generational thing, but also, could you even imagine asking someone now to write you a check? Like, I don't even know, like.
Well, my mom is about to turn 70 and she is on Venmo. Like, that woman does not want to carry a big bag around anymore.
No,
Like,
we did that.
she's
We're done.
ready. Yeah.
That's also a barrier for nonprofits in general. I mean, how many offices do you walk into? And this is no shame on Dell, but they're running Dell computers that were donated, and they've maxed out the operating system they can upgrade to because of the hardware that's happening. I mean, I think within the sector, there is that starvation mentality around spending money on infrastructure. Granted, let's go all the way back. This comes from funders on down and attributing percents and what that looks like. But can you imagine also what could happen within nonprofits if they were able to be in a moment technologically? They're 15 years ago, many of them technologically. And so the time they spend, well, if I restart it 4 times and jiggle this wire, I can get that printed to give to my whatever. So I just think of that in and of itself is a barrier that within the organization. So then to ask them to go out and be talking to donors in a way that donors communicate about how they allocate, literally how I move my money from me to you. It's just this sort of system.
I
feel that for them.
Existential sigh.
I feel that for them. So, I think we're planting seeds, especially with our frontline fundraisers, of some big ideas, also some big areas that we're acknowledging, like, girl, we see you. That is a barrier. I see that. Where, without everything being changed and without everybody being on board in an organization, how can gift officers start to impact some of that individual giving, and where should they be spending their time to kind of start these pieces moving forward?
Yeah. So, I think that there's a couple of places. First things first, I think in the sector, when we talk about change, it can be very intimidating, and people sort of attach the white supremacy value of urgency to that change. Like, now that we've named it, we have to do it, and we have to do it quickly. And change isn't going to move at our pace, right? Like, that's just not how. I would love if that was true, y'all, but it's not. And so I think that, one thing when we think about change, that doesn't mean that we change the rules on our existing donors without communicating, right?
Yes.
Like, we wouldn't remodel our home without talking to our partner. So as we're changing, right? I mean, maybe we would, and then maybe that partner would be like, deuces, right? I'm out. But when you're in a relationship, that requires communication and that requires listening. And so if an organization is deciding to try something different or change its practices, like, tell your community that you're doing it, and then ask them for their feedback or ask them, what they would like to see, right? Because you may learn that your donors have been waiting to see this from you for a long time and just never knew if they could have that conversation or not. So I think that that's one piece of it. I think the other piece of it really, when we look at, so sort of more data, but, the Lilly School and Bank of America does their study on, affluent giving every year. And last year's report, y'all, if you don't have some very targeted and specific cultivation practices for women, like you're missing the mark.
Yeah.
And then, the Donors of Color Network did that really incredible report, I think it was in 2022, about what was it called? Philanthropy Always Sounds Like Someone Else. And when you read both of these reports, which are really focused on two groups of potential donors who don't have this sort of old Christian white man landowning identity, right? Like that this sector has sort of grown around. They're looking for different things. They don't want their name on a wall, right? You're not going to go find these donors when you're having lunch with a wealth advisor who introduces you to his clients, right? So gift officers, we need to get out from behind our desks and we need to go learn, right? What do we not know? If we haven't been into certain parts of our community, we need to go spend time there. We need to pick a coffee shop. We need to pick a bookshop, right? We need to pick up a faith community, and we need to understand, right, the communities that we seek to build relationships with. And that work is long, right? The work of acquisition is long. So let's not put a goal. Oh, we're going to pick up this many donors with these many identities by Q3, right? That's not it, right? We have to think about measuring our work differently. So I'll say that. And I think one more piece here is, if we know that the biggest predictor, sort of, if we're going to get a donation, is if we've already gotten one, right, from a donor.
Yep.
We need to go find those lapsed donors or those one-time crisis donors, and we need to build a different kind of relationship with them, right? If our retention, retention seems to be like the thorn in our side, and we have never quite figured out, how to sort of turn the corner on that. But we also know that those people chose us, and they chose us for a reason. So we need to sort of go to them wherever they are, listen, and then bring that back in to change, right, the way that our organization is doing our resource development work.
Yeah. And this is an area where I actually think technology is going to help us a lot, because a lot of the big software companies right now are investing a ton of resource into how AI can help to catch lapsed donors, can flag us of duration, can sort of feed us a portfolio in a timely fashion. So I do think that there's sort of an evolution happening right now in that. You mentioned philanthropy and the role that foundations have played. I think that there's a history of foundations telling us 8% of what you raise can only, like a sliver, can only go back into the infrastructure of your organization. And we've seen that that's not super sustainable. They've also identified funding priorities in these weird gaps of time, and we're seeing that that's not super sustainable. You coach organizations all the time about how to start to evolve their practices. How willing are foundations right now to be sitting at the table with fundraisers and having conversations with them about community-centric fundraising?
I'm chuckling because, the one big thing I took away from the law school program I just completed is generally the answer is it depends.
Yes.
I think that there are some funders who are excited about change, who are leaning into creativity. And it shows up in a lot of different ways. I've seen some funders sort of bypass the nonprofit gatekeepers and actually go into community and say, okay, you are benefiting, right, from this organization. What does that mean? And are you, right? So not just taking data that is given to them, but really getting that sort of on the ground feedback, which has helped them really sort of reorient and organize their priorities and the language that they're using. We've seen funders who have really shifted away from those very restricted funding opportunities, or the very cumbersome grant application. I think in the community-centric fundraising movement, we have had national funders actually fund the work of creating a safer space for fundraisers of color or fundraisers with other marginalized identities. So resourcing this work with sort of a low barrier to entry. I think I've also seen funders, and this is the place that really piques my curiosity, sort of realizing, oh, we are the problem. This money actually came from communities in an extractive way.
Right.
So we actually need to figure out a sunsetting plan to get that money out of our principal, out of this endowment, and back into the community. And I think that is one of the most powerful ways that philanthropy can actually continue to support this work.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
We're only getting 5% a year, y'all, and you're sitting on 95. If all of that money got moved back into community, imagine what the impact would be, right? Instead of, well, we can give you a $10,000 grant for 2 years and then you got to take a year off. Y'all, it's not serving us.
Yeah.
It's not serving us.
It's not making the impact or the difference that we claim to be making. Nope. Well, when we come back, I want to ask Rachel about how folks can engage her. So we're going to take a short break and then we'll be right back. We've been partnering with Greater Giving for over 20 years as our go-to event auction software. Greater Giving allows us to do our job, planning fundraising events, even better because we can manage guest lists, seating, bid number assignments, and sales all in one place.
That makes it great for our nonprofit partners and their guests. Check out Greater Giving for your next event at greatergiving.com. Link in the show notes. We are back here with Rachel D'Souza having a lovely chat about community-centric fundraising.
So much fun.
Let's change some big institutional pieces to make this happen. Rachel, for folks who are new with the journey or have been on the journey with community-centric fundraising, I think it's always helpful for folks, especially when they're having conversations with other folks and stakeholders and organizations, to get needles to move. What are resources? What do you suggest for nonprofits, professionals, people in the sector who are interested in learning more about community-centric fundraising?
So obviously I'm going to point folks in the direction of the Community-Centric Fundraising website. We have what we call the Hub, which is a place where practitioners across the country contribute their experience and expertise in the form of essays, podcasts, videos, poems, spoken word. And it is such a rich offering of the ways in which we can sort of think about how to navigate this work. We also have a Slack community that is organized by region, that is organized by interest area, that is organized by spicy people who sort of, have picked a topic that wasn't on our radar.
Amazing.
It's been a really wonderful way to build community. I think there's even a Slack, thread called resources where people just sort of drop things in. I also believe that the organization, so EPIP, the Emerging Practitioners in Philanthropy, they have an incredible training program called Philanthropology. But the focus of it is really to sort of talk about the context that we're in. And so I think sometimes practitioners get into the field because they care about the cause, they want to do good work, whatever. And they're like, what the hell did I just step into? And then context, right? And so there is sort of a history lesson that is told from the sort of philanthropy perspective of things that I think is a really awesome offering. And then if you're not listening to the, Ethical Rainmaker podcast, Michelle Murray has just a great set of conversations with folks about what change looks like, in the sector.
Yeah. Well, we'll be sure to link all of those in the show notes so that we can direct folks. I know that you have a book that you want to let folks know about.
Okay. So, What the Fundraising just came out. My friend Mallory Erickson, there was an Amazon glitch. It wasn't supposed to be released until next week. And then it showed up on my door yesterday. And I was like, look. And she's like, I know. But her philosophy around alignment fundraising and how we need to sort of feel in our bodies to be able to do this work aligns beautifully with community-centric fundraising. And there are some really good nuggets in here from other leaders in this movement, me included. So I have to plug the book, and
Excellent.
go grab it. It's wonderful.
Well,
Fantastic.
you bring so much resource and wisdom into this space. I'm curious if folks want to know more about you, if they're looking to learn more about your work, about Gladiator Consulting, about how to engage you, where can we direct folks?
Yeah. So you can obviously hop onto our website, Gladiator RDS, my initials, .com, and, get connected with us. I would advise to sign up for our newsletter. It's a monthly newsletter. You can do that at the bottom of the webpage. We also, next year, will be offering a community-centric fundraising peer cohort. So for people who are interested and engaged and want this kind of professional development that, talks about anti-racism, talks about change management, talks about bringing your tough donors and board members along. It's a space where we provide both that learning content
Amazing.
for folks, and then a place for them to engage with their peers to get that pushback and build that strategy to be able to take back to their organization. So we'll do that. I think we have our dates up for winter and spring for next year. So definitely would love to include people. And then if you want to know more just about our day-to-day, we're big on Instagram. We're old millennials. We haven't made it over to TikTok yet. So you can follow Gladiator or me on Instagram. And you can also find us on LinkedIn.
Excellent.
Rachel, we so appreciate your time, but more than that, we so appreciate your investment in this sector and moving all of the needles in the sector.
I am energized, and I appreciate being able to have this conversation with y'all.
Fantastic. So we're going to encourage folks to join us again next week because we're going to continue this conversation with Rachel, and we are going to start to get into the nitty-gritty of how to decolonize your event. Please join us.
The Fundraising Elevator is produced in partnership with Swaim Strategies at the studios of the AV Department. The program is produced and directed by Steve Osborne, with audio engineering and original music by Dwayne Anderson, Heidi Christensen, and Adam Breeden. Video production by Shannon Doran. Graphic design by Pendulum Creative Group. Marketing by Lisa Aragon. Support from Mary Elizabeth, Todd Campbell, John Lyles, and Andy Dowsett. And voiceover by Josh Boykin.
Hey y'all, it's Kristen. Before we leave, I want to ask for your help to make the podcast grow. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please like, follow, and subscribe to the Fundraising Elevator. And if you're getting a lot out of the show, share it with a friend. Leave us a review. These things help make sure that the podcast continues heading up. Thanks so much for being here and tuning in.
Are you ready to engage supporters and grow your base with your own podcast? Then let us introduce you to our partners at the AV Department in Portland, Oregon. In addition to delivering exceptional live event audiovisual production and videography, they also have a top-tier production studio and an expert team ready to take your content ideas to the next level. Contact the AV Department to schedule a consultation and start bringing your podcast vision to life.